This is a CNN special report. Hello, I'm Judy Woodruff in Washington. Ahead this hour, power politics. He took power through a coup. Now the Pakistani president walks a fine line, trying to support the U.S.-led coalition while not losing support from his own people. Inside the Taliban, a reporter's notebook from CNN's Nick Robertson. Living on the edge in the western U.S., we'll ask what Californians are saying after weeks of watching the East Coast deal with anthrax, now faced with their own apparent terrorist threats against bridges. And the eye of the storm, Hurricane Michelle battering Cuba, but not ignoring South Florida. Thank you for joining us. We begin with some of the latest developments that we're following this hour. U.S. forces carried out what are being described as some of the heaviest attacks yet on Taliban frontline troops today. Northern Alliance forces who witnessed the strikes say the casualties included a Taliban commander. CNN has confirmed reports that the CIA had an undercover office in 7 World Trade Center, one of the buildings destroyed along with the Twin Towers September the 11th. A U.S. official tells CNN the office was involved in counterterrorism and counterintelligence. The official says no CIA employees were killed in the collapse. And the head of the Centers for Disease Control says smallpox vaccinations have been given to the people who would be the first to respond to a smallpox attack. Dr. Jeffrey Copeland also told CNN's Wolf Blitzer that the CDC is working to get enough vaccine to protect every American against smallpox. More now on today's airstrikes inside Afghanistan. They appeared to be concentrated on Taliban front lines in the northeastern part of that country, where Northern Alliance forces are poised to take advantage by moving deeper into Taliban territory. CNN's Satinder Bindra witnessed today's airstrikes near the town of Mazar-e-Sharif.
This carpet bombing continued for 7 hours in what Northern Alliance or United Front troops near the Tajik-Afghan border describe as the most intense airstrikes here.
The U.S. planes bombarded this area 4 times. Every time the U.S. planes dropped different loads of bombs, sometimes 9, sometimes 10, and 11.
All the bombs, according to eyewitnesses, fell on a frontline Taliban position called Kolkata Hill. Radio messages intercepted by the United Front suggest the Taliban suffered casualties in the bombing, with at least one senior Arab commander called Tabuk killed. But, say United Front commanders, hundreds of other Taliban troops remain well dug in.
They make trenches in the ground and long trenches in the hills and use them if planes are coming.
U.S. planes are now flying in Taliban airspace with impunity. Their jet vapor clearly visible for miles around, but they attract only token anti-aircraft fire, which appears ineffective because these planes fly so high. In more than a week of bombing in this sector, it appears U.S. planes have almost wiped out any effective Taliban air defenses. On the ground, the situation is different. United Front commanders say thousands of Taliban troops still man their front lines, and they're motivated, well-armed and experienced fighters. Such an opposition, say United Front commanders, can inflict heavy casualties on any invading force. If United Front troops do advance, they'll have to deal with thousands of mines planted by the Taliban. Still, at least 2 commanders in this area say they are ready to attack.
There's a state of readiness right now. We are ready, and we are waiting for orders. As soon as we get them, we will attack the Taliban.
With winter approaching fast, these soldiers realize they have only a tiny window of opportunity. They also know they're short of ammunition and supplies, so they're appealing to Washington to arm them to help fight what is likely to be the toughest and bloodiest stage of this war. Satinder Bindra, CNN, Hanam Hill, northeastern Afghanistan.
Back here in Washington, President Bush is back at the White House after a weekend at Camp David. This coming week, he will make a series of high-profile speeches as the administration tries to assure the world that America's new war is progressing as planned. CNN's Major Garrett is live now at the White House with that and reaction to the latest battlefront reports. Hello, Major.
Good evening, Judy. As you mentioned, the administration has laid out a very well-structured week of communication to the world that not only is the military campaign going well, but their standing in the coalition remains very important to the United States. And that effort began in earnest today when the administration sent just one spokesman out to the Sunday talk shows. That was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Richard Myers, and he left no doubt that he believes the U.S. military is making steady and important progress in Afghanistan.
I think it's going exactly according to our plan. We have taken down the Taliban air defenses. We have disrupted their ability to resupply their own forces. We took down their transports, most of their helicopters, most of their, most of their communications have been taken down. In fact, some of them are communicating now with runners, which is obviously not in Afghanistan, not the most efficient way to do that.
Judy, let me try to explain just a little bit more in depth what the general was referring to. You know, about a week ago, there were a lot of questions here at the White House and at the Pentagon. Well, you know, you don't seem to be bombing, the U.S. doesn't seem to be bombing the front lines of the Taliban. Are you waiting? Are you under some diplomatic pressure not to? Well, look, the White House does not like to get into any operational details, but what have we been able to pick up the last few days here at the White House is, look, there was a means to the Pentagon's approach. That is, by bombing areas behind the front lines, the Pentagon was hoping to make it difficult, if not impossible, for the Taliban to resupply the front lines once those front lines were hit. They thought it was crucial to knock out whatever supplies could come up the roads and all the material that would come back up to the front lines once those front lines were bombed. They believe they were successful in achieving that goal. Now they're bombing the front lines, trying to soften those up for what looks to be, and somewhat in the near future, some type of ground operation against those frontline forces.
Major, we know that there are people on the National Security Council staff who have military defense backgrounds. Are you suggesting or are you saying that none of them have any questions or there's any dissatisfaction there with the way this campaign, this war is going?
Well, Judy, as you well know, this is one very disciplined White House, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you that there's nobody at the NSC or the Pentagon that doesn't at times wonder aloud if something might be done tactically a bit differently. But if they're doing so with the utmost privacy, and certainly not sharing that with us here in the press corps covering the White House. The very solid feeling you get here at the White House is, A, the President is not going to interfere with the strategic operational decisions the Pentagon makes. He went out of his way on Friday answering a question about whether or not the military campaign would occur during Ramadan and continue during Ramadan, which begins on November 17th. He said, look, this is not a political war. I respect the chain of command. Operational decisions are in the hands of the Pentagon, and there's no second guessing or finger pointing or anything even approaching that here at the White House. Judy?
And Major, what about the President's week ahead? We mentioned that he's going to be talking about trying to keep the international coalition together. He's got a diplomatic mission. He's also going to be talking about the homeland security picture. It seems to me there's a lot of planning and thinking that's gone into this week.
Well, for those of you at home, if you want to circle some dates on your day planner and sort of chart what the President's going to be doing and what he's going to be saying, let's start now. Tuesday, a major speech delivered to a terrorism conference in Warsaw, Poland. That'll be a video conference hookup, talking to Central European leaders, talking about the importance to Europe of sticking with this coalition. On Wednesday, the President will deliver a speech or give an update on the financial war against terrorism. On Thursday, he leaves Washington, goes out to a location we've not been told about quite yet, to deliver what is described as a major speech talking about homeland security, trying to ease the anxiety not only about anthrax, chemical, biological warfare, but also about the general level of threat and anxiety most people feel as the FBI and the federal government continue to issue these warnings to be on a maximum state of alert. And the last important date on your day planner, Saturday, the President travels to New York to deliver a major speech to the United Nations General Assembly, talking about the importance of the global coalition against terror, the stakes in the war against terror, and how it all is going. Judy?
All right, Major Garrett, I've certainly got them all on my day planner. Thanks.
So do I.
We appreciate it. Well, the President's man in charge of the Pentagon is also busy trying to keep that international coalition supporting the military battle against the Taliban. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld is wrapping up a 5-nation tour that included stops in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, and India. In Pakistan, Secretary Rumsfeld met with that country's president, Pervez Musharraf. The Army general who came to power in a coup 2 years ago is turning out to be one of the key U.S. allies in the war on terror. CNN's Bill Delaney reports Musharraf's stance comes at some risk to his own power.
When Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf met Sunday in Islamabad with U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, the Pakistani leader brought up his hope for a suspension of U.S.-led bombing in Afghanistan during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan.
It is an important question and certainly an issue that all of us are sensitive to. The reality is that the threats of additional terrorist acts are there.
Which in diplomatic speak indicates the bombing will go on. And in Pakistani power politics indicates Pervez Musharraf, by not pressing the issue, feels secure enough to live with continued bombing, risking intensified protests during Ramadan. But increasingly, Pervez Musharraf seems to be masterfully balancing his support for the U.S.-led coalition and support from most Pakistanis.
2 years ago, President Musharraf seized power here from the democratically elected civilian Nawaz Sharif, who'd appointed him head of the military. Here in Pakistan, though, Musharraf's coup was seen by most Pakistanis not so much as a radical move as a return to moderation.
Restoring above all a degree of trust squandered by successive corrupt civilian governments.
At the highest levels of government, particularly his own person, there is no corruption. People realize that even if this government has not delivered as much as they would have liked, it is still far, far better than the civilian governments that went before them.
Cleaning up corruption, part of Musharraf's critical efforts to breathe life into the Pakistani economy. Already now with the prospect of breathing more freely since Pakistan's stance on the terror campaign led to the end of international economic sanctions. Still, Musharraf walking a political razor's edge, reaching out to some opposition political parties while throwing leaders of others calling for his ouster under house arrest. Last week, he banned any demonstrations calling for an end to his government. He detained without charge elderly nuclear scientists, apparently suspected of possible collusion with the Taliban. Toughness, edge, along the lines of ceasing years of Pakistani support for the Taliban in the wake of the thousands of deaths from the terror attacks in the United States. While swiftly reshuffling intelligence chiefs and officers he considered too sympathetic to the Taliban. Musharraf's resilience also, though, because he's simply gifted.